Hello everyone, welcome to Clear Perspective. I'm Serene. Let's start with China today. This past weekend, World Health Organization experts were finally allowed to investigate the origin of the COVID-19 virus. WHO had already stressed beforehand to not have high expectations for the investigation. WHO Emergency Chief Mike Ryan said, quote, "There are no guarantees of answers. But there is still a huge amount of interest on this issue, as people want to see how the CCP would respond." The spokesman for the Chinese Foreign Ministry, Zhao Lijian, previously wrote a poem in which he admits that Wuhan was the origin of the outbreak. He said at a press conference on January 29th, quote, "I'd like to stress that the exchanges and the cooperation on origin tracing between WHO experts and the Chinese professionals are part of a global study, not an investigation." Why did the CCP stress that it was not an investigation? Because that would imply that the CCP is the suspect. It shows that the CCP is determined to continue denying responsibility. The WHO team of 13 experts arrived in Wuhan on January 14th and spent 2 weeks in quarantine first. The entire itinerary of the WHO team was arranged by the CCP. It was not made public, and they cannot contact media sources directly. Many people see these 2 weeks of investigation as a mere formality. It is unclear how the members of this team were selected. One important member is Peter Daszak, president of the U.S. Eco-Health Alliance. Daszak has been a supporter of the Chinese Communist Party since the initial outbreak of the virus. He claims that the idea of a lab leak in Wuhan is a conspiracy theory. However, it is widely known the man has had academic collaborations with the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Some of you may remember that on February 19th last year, a group of public health scientists from around the world published an open letter in the medical journal The Lancet. Quote, "We stand together to strongly condemn conspiracy theories suggesting that COVID-19 does not have a natural origin." This article was then frequently used by the CCP to mislead the public. According to emails obtained by the U.S. Right2Know, a non-profit investigative research group, the real author of this public letter was Peter Daszak. He intended for it to, quote, "not be identifiable as coming from any one organization or person, and wanted to avoid the appearance of a political statement." In fact, Daszak's ties to the CCP are much deeper. He worked closely with the Wuhan Institute of Virology for 15 years, during which he published more than 24 papers with the institute and funded research on bat coronaviruses. Daszak's collaborator on bat coronaviruses research was Shi Zhengli, who is closely connected to the lab leak of the Wuhan virus. Her name was mentioned in a statement from the former U.S. Department of State Secretary Mike Pompeo. I did a brief search and found that Daszak and Shi collaborated on at least 3 papers. Until last June, Daszak continued to collaborate with Shi Zhengli on a paper titled "Origin and the Cross-Species Transmission of Bat Coronaviruses in China." An expert so closely tied with the Wuhan Institute of Virology and Shi Zhengli became a member of the WHO investigation team. It's hard to imagine what kind of collusion took place behind the scenes. Richard Ebright is a biosecurity expert and a professor of chemical biology at Rutgers University. He stated, quote, "Daszak is PI on $3.7 million NIH grant supporting bat coronaviruses surveillance at Wuhan Institute of Virology and had bat coronavirus gain-of-function research at Wuhan Institute of Virology. If that is not a material conflict of interest, then nothing is." From this, we can see that Biden's decision of rejoining the WHO was poorly thought out. The so-called investigation by the WHO will most likely certify that the CCP was not responsible for the virus. Once the WHO officially publishes their conclusion, will the US endorse it? Will the Biden administration acknowledge or retract the statement made by Mike Pompeo, in which he directly stated that the Wuhan Institute of Virology was the origin of the virus? Should the CCP continue to be held accountable for concealing the outbreak of the virus? This puts the United States in a dilemma. The CCP has used this pandemic to wage a war against America. It has cost America trillions of dollars within a year and killed hundreds of thousands of Americans. Now, let's talk about the coup in Burma that happened on Monday. This news dominated the front page around the world. As we know, Burma is a small Southeast Asian country, and its military has asserted control many times. It never attracted any attention from the international community. But why is it different this time? Because the Burmese military released a statement that said the country's election was fraudulent. The military announced that Aung San Suu Kyi, President Win Myint, and several state ministers are being detained. The military will take control of the country and declare a state of emergency for 1 year. The military stated that this was due to serious voter fraud in last November's parliamentary election. The National League for Democracy, led by Aung San Suu Kyi, won more than 80% of the seats, and the new Congress was scheduled to be inaugurated on Monday. The military said, quote, "After the state of emergency period, free and fair multi-party general elections will be rerun and the state power will be handed over to an elected party which meets the democratic standards." The National League for Democracy, the ruling party in Burma, stated in a letter written under Aung San Suu Kyi's name, quote, "The actions of the military are actions to put the country back under a dictatorship." The military said that they had conducted an independent verification of voter lists from 314 townships. They discovered that there were issues in 17 townships and more than 8.6 million irregularities. Meanwhile, other parties in Burma, such as the USDP, have also called for a discussion in order to resolve the issue. They proposed solutions like recounting or verification of dubious ballots. The NLD still did not agree, and the Union Election Commission also claimed that there were no problems with the election. At this point, it is easy to understand why the coup attracted so much attention from the international community. It is almost a projection of the United States. The Burmese military's challenge against the election results undoubtedly touched Biden's nerve. The Biden administration had reacted rather quickly in issuing a public statement. They called on the Burmese to accept the results of the election. In addition, Australia, Canada, and the UK have all sided with the US, calling for the immediate release of the officials and condemning the military. The Burmese military has not said that they wanted to establish a military government. So far, the military has only stated that they will conduct fair elections and restore power to the elected government after 1 year. The military claims that they are acting in accordance to the constitution written in 2008. The Burmese constitution says, quote, "If there arises a state of emergency that could cause disintegration of the Union, disintegration of national solidarity, and a loss of sovereign power, or attempts therefore by wrongful forcible means, such as insurgency or violence, the Commander-in-Chief of the Defense Services has the right to take over and exercise state sovereign power. If the military are able to provide solid evidence of voter fraud, it would be very hard for the US and the other nations to deny it. It will be especially awkward for Biden, as it will prove that using the military to solve voter fraud is completely legitimate. Many nations are condemning the actions of the Burmese military by focusing on the issue of overturning a democratically elected government. However, the real issue is whether there actually was election fraud. If the fraud was real, then the supposed democratically elected government was a sham. It would prove that the actions of military are legitimate and just. But if the military fails to procure solid evidence, the actions of the military would be an illegal attempt to overthrow the democratic government. Lastly, we would like to remind our friends again that our platform may be restricted on social media. Click the link in the description below to register your email. In case of any unexpected disruptions, we will email you our latest updates. That's all for today. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.